Hey, it's Endymion, and I can't believe it, but yes, it's almost the end of December, and here I am talking about Dragon Age Veilguard. But now the game's director has decided, amidst horrific losses and rejection by both players and critics, that now is a good time to start pushing lies in order to change the narrative. Firstly, Inverse.com, which is known for being a place full of yes, they, thems that hate players, has decided to release this article on Veilguard's director, and it's titled Corinne Bush is the ruler of RPGs, conqueror of haters. Yeah, already the article is gaslighting the reader because Corinne Bush hasn't done neither of these things. Let's not forget that Veilguard didn't win anything at the Game Awards. It lost in the only category that it was nominated in, which by the way wasn't even for Best RPG, which is hilarious and should tell you everything that you need to know. But besides that, Veilguard was a failure as well financially too. It only managed, according to Smash JT's sources, to sell somewhere around 1.5 million copies, which is abysmal for a game that was in development for the better part of 10 years and went through multiple renditions. Many Dragon Age fans, myself included, have blasted Veilguard for being nothing like the previous games. Gone are the dark fantasy roots, gone are any and all controversial elements that were key to previous games in the franchise. Everything has been sanded off to ensure the entire experience is as Fisher-Price friendly as its art style looks. Nothing can offend or challenge the player, neither in mind, body, or soul. Everyone has to agree with you that there can't be any internal strife within these characters in your party either. And you know things are cooked when BioWare made the executive decision to not allow party members to be playable in the game either. Which is a legit staple of the series, by the way, so gone are even the strategic elements of previous games. So what you're left with is a baby's first RPG that might as well as have the Rugrats theme playing faintly in the background the entire time you're playing it, because that's what Veilguard is. I find the game to be an offense to the RPG moniker, a creature that is wearing a flesh suit that is disguising itself as something that it isn't. Veilguard is garbage. I implore nobody waste their time on it and just pretends like it never happened going forward. But of course then there's this part of this Inverse article that gasses up mid like it's a 10 out of 10, which says, when it comes to authenticity in games, plenty of directors and developers talk the talk, but Corinne Bush is the rare game maker who delivers. From her time with The Sims to Dragon Age, Bush has always brought a deep sense of humanity to the game, putting characters first and never shying away from nuance or complexity in identity, relationships, and existential crises. It's what makes Bush a leader in the industry and why BioWare tried so hard to carry on the Dragon Age series legacy with Veilguard. But Bush isn't finished yet. She's come a long way in the industry and has wisdom to impart and more projects to come. Wow, everything you just said, Inverse, was a complete and total lie. Like, I'm not kidding. Genuinely, everything that was said is just flat out not true when it comes to Dragon Age. Saying that plenty of game directors don't deliver an authenticity is just a lie. Then stating that Corinne Bush here delivers is hilarious when it's the exact opposite. Plenty of directors deliver. Look at all the games that did well this year like Space Marine, Black Myth Wukong, or even Stellar Blade. One of the games that didn't deliver was Veilguard, which your article is about, so why are you lying like this? The game couldn't even break 100,000 players on Steam in its debut weekend. I don't understand why games journalists and devs lie like this when it's so easy to pick them apart and prove otherwise. You guys are just lining yourselves up to get slapped around like this. You know that, right? And that part where Inverse says putting characters first and never shying away from nuance or complexity and identity, relationships, and whatever else, that's also a lie. Look, I played Veilguard 100% of the game. I did everything. All this footage you're seeing is from my playthrough of the game itself. There is no nuance or complexity. Identity, sure, because Corinne Bush here, who's trans, obviously has an agenda of their own. Because every single prominent leader in this game that is considered a good guy is almost always either gay or trans themselves. The Shadow Dragons has a trans woman leader, the Veil Jumpers have not one but two gay leaders, and it just keeps going on, man. The agenda was about as thin as the lies being told in this very article. The game was an unmitigated disaster from beginning to end. And claiming that Veilguard did in any way give players a complex narrative is an insult to actual games out there that do just that. There is nothing complex about a game that doesn't allow you to be a villain, but only a hero, unlike previous games. There's nothing complex when you can't kick out any of your team members or disagree with them in any meaningful way that have real ramifications. all you can do is agree with and support their beliefs like Tosh and her non-binary nonsense that I'm sure you're aware of. There is no nuance in Veilguard. I guarantee you in a year's time, you'll be seeing plenty of video essays that are like 4 hours long, where people will go through and dissect the entire game for how awful it really is, or maybe they won't even do that. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter anymore anyway. This new BioWare has effectively killed Dragon Age anyways. And then confirming that Corinne is still employed at BioWare and is working on other things, that is the cherry on top. The epitome of failing upward like many other woke activists do in other companies and fields as well. They all just ruin things, make zero money, and then tank franchises, yet the people who ultimately make these decisions are scared liberals who don't want to be labeled as evil. So, like always, they will just sign the checks, look the other way as yet another franchise is burned to the ground in the process, and even more money is lost in the long run. Some reports online claim that Veilguard's budget was around $250 million, if you can believe it. And I think we all want to ask, where did that money go? Probably on the cutting room floor, if we're being real. The Witcher 3 cost $81 million to make a comparison. Yes, Veilguard had about 3 times the budget or so of The Witcher 3. Now you can ask yourself, where did this money go exactly? Because $20 million must have just gone to soy lattes for the entire team, man. I don't see how that much money made it into this game at all. It's not even a massive game. The cutscenes are not wildly impressive. The facial animations are bog standard at best. The fact that The Witcher 3 came out 9 years prior to Veilguard both looks better, plays better, and is way bigger just kind of shows you what I mean. Corinne Bush should never direct a big budget RPG game ever again, in my opinion. All they did was kill a franchise with their politics, and the fact that Inverse is trying to prop them up as some sort of savior is honestly insulting to the real game devs out here who are actually delivering great games to players. This article should have been about Dmitry Grigorenko, the guy who directed Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 instead. Because that guy actually delivered a game that spoke to its audience, sold well, and continues to thrive even to this day. Shame on you, Inverse, but we're not done, of course. There's plenty more slop where this came from. Corinne then says, "It's not lost on me and it's not lost on the team how important these games are in people's lives. Coming into this game, that's a tremendous feeling of accountability. And of needing to be true and authentic to what these games means to people. Well, I think I speak for everyone when I say you guys failed spectacularly. You not only didn't meet expectations, you actually fumbled what was considered one of the best jumping off points for an RPG in years. You had Solus, you had the momentum, the hype, and for what? To finish that plot thread in 30 minutes? Only to pick it up in the last mission for maybe another 20 minutes or so? I said this before in other videos. But Veilguard is actually like if Avengers Infinity War put Thanos in jail 10 minutes into watching it. And then like Ebony Maw was the bad guy for the rest of the movie until Thanos shows up in the last 10 minutes in Endgame. It was a tremendous loss of potential on display here, truly horrible in every way. But this next part is just a lie, man. Look at this. That holistic sense of character is a big part of what's made Dragon Age so successful and lasting. Its influence is clear to see, especially in the 2023 Game of the Year Baldur's Gate 3, which heavily borrows from the world and party member design of Dragon Age games. It's a connection that's been pointed out by countless fans and critics, but what's fascinating is how BG3 and Veilguard feel like they're advancing different aspects of Dragon Age's identity. First of all, never compare Baldur's Gate 3 to Veilguard. That's like comparing premium beef to a rotting sausage. Secondly, Corinne Bush cannot claim to have known what made those Dragon Age games special in development, because they were not present when those games were being made at BioWare. Remember that John Epler, who actually is a producer on Veilguard, was at BioWare during Origin's development. And he even said, as I'll show you on screen here, that he said there's fewer than 20 people left at BioWare who are even familiar with the engine that Origins was made on. He pretty much ousted BioWare and told the public that the entire dev studio is made up of people who didn't work on these original games. So Corinne Bush, the director of Veilguard, is also one of those people who also came in after the greatness was created by far better creatives. So claiming this team knows Dragon Age is a lie. They don't. They proved this when they thought what they made was good enough to release it to an eager fan base. I'll give them credit at least, the game ran well and didn't crash, but when it came to making new characters for fans to love in this world, they failed miserably. I mean, you know it's bad when senior writers who had credits all the way back on Mass Effect 2 have publicly stated that they have left BioWare effective immediately recently too. Sylvia wait, how do you pronounce that last name? Fecca Tacutti? I don't know, man. Anyway, Sylvia Fettuccini has left BioWare claiming They're pretty much burnt out and need a break, and I don't blame them. So great, BioWare, you lost another legacy dev, good job. Then there's this other part of the Inverse article where Corinne basically states that their trans identity had a big influence on Veilguard. Yeah, we could tell, you put it literally everywhere. For a series that rarely dealt with this, outside of maybe one side character in Iron Bull's team in Inquisition, y'all decided to make almost everyone in a prominent position gay or trans on purpose. And it was so blatantly obvious it took me out of the world every single time someone stated it. Oh my god, and then there's this next part. Like, guys, please listen to this without laughing. To Bush and the team, it felt like the right time to really take Dragon Age's exploration of identity further. Especially with a character like Rook that's so molded by the player's personal feelings and thoughts. But one of the more interesting strides Veilguard makes is allowing you to share experiences including romances. With a compelling cast of party members, easily some of the most memorable characters BioWare has ever created.
What the f are you talking about, man?
Hey, yo, what are you smoking over there at Inverse? Because it sounds like some good stuff. God damn, dude. Veilguard has some of the best characters in BioWare history. What? Y'all are telling me Tosh or Lucanus holds a candle to Garrus, Liara, Morrigan, or Rex? You are crazy, dude. These people have lost their composure. There's no way they wrote this without Corinne breathing down their shoulder, bro. Come on now. This article is gaslighting me, dude. I can feel my blood pressure starting to go Kaioken right now. Not quite Super Saiyan, but we'll see. Then they pivot the conversation to Gamergate 2 and the backlash, and oh boy, okay, here we go, and it states, Dragon Age is far from the only game that's come under fire recently, particularly for inclusions of diversity or diverse storytelling. For most of this year, Assassin's Creed Shadows has been the constant target of a hate campaign, with Ubisoft's art director recently condemning the backlash and harassment the studio and team has faced. The creator of the indie game Tales of Kenzara Zhao, Abubakar Salim, has also been vocal about the fever pitch of racism the game and its team have received. These kinds of events seem to be happening more and more, but for BioWare and Bush, the focus is on celebrating what the team has created. I know, and something that's very important to me is that games are inherently diverse when you think about the size of these teams and the specializations you have within them. When you have diverse, complex, large groups of people coming together to make something, of course the game is going to be a reflection of those teams, says Bush. I think we need to consider that we can make the most authentic, best experiences when we're tying into what makes us as the developers, and you as the fans, when we can tie into those elements that make us distinctly human, and that means differences. Well, Corinne, you failed. You made the worst Dragon Age game yet. It sold like crap, got ignored by basically everyone come's award season, except for Time Magazine, which said that Veilguard was its game of the year, but Time Magazine isn't even a gaming magazine or website, so who really cares what they think? The point is that you guys made a game for a very small demographic of people, specifically trans and non-binary players, and then pretty much ignored the vast majority of the player base out there while assuming that it would sell simply because it had Dragon Age in the title. And what you ended up with is a bad RPG that was made for nobody but yourselves at BioWare. We already know that BioWare hires based on identity. I covered this a while back already. We know they're full of activists. We know they're panicking about Mass Effect 5. Again, I covered that too before as well. We know that Veilguard is not a triumph. It did not move the needle or sell what they believed was required for it to make it a success. And claiming that this team, besides a very small amount of them, had any part in the classics of BioWare before is ridiculous. This is the equivalent of a Michelin star restaurant being bought by people who've never cooked before, and assuming that they could ride the name of the establishment to success by selling you lukewarm mac and cheese instead of steak tenderloin. Everything BioWare did with Veilguard should be rightfully blasted and criticized. As a massive fan of both Mass Effect and Dragon Age, I condemn Veilguard to the darkest depths of irrelevancy. I implore no game studio ever does what BioWare did here with a franchise this popular. To take a tentpole RPG franchise and reduce it to this weird, mobile game-esque woke disaster takes such delusion, it's incredible that EA released it in the first place. Shame on BioWare, shame on the director here, and shame on Inverse.com to have ever thought releasing this article would change public perception of the game going forward. And then saying that Veilguard is some of BioWare's best writing. Don't you dare even try to make that into something. How dare you all stand where greatness once was? To think that a studio that delivered the greatest trilogy of RPGs ever conceived, and a reactive and beautifully rich world in Dragon Age be reduced to such ruin years after they failed with Anthem 2, by the way, it astounds me. Like, you guys released the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, you saw the response to those games, you saw how badly players yearned for new experiences that harken to those golden years. And in your blasphemous woke wisdom, you disregarded all of that for this instead. I feel nothing but disdain for Veilguard, this article, and Corinne Bush. You killed one of my favorite game franchises. May you never put a single line of script or dialogue into anything Dragon Age related ever again. Mass Effect 2. Shame on all of you. Your agenda killed something that I and many others waited 10 long years for. I'm just bewildered these people actually thought they did something here. Also, let's quickly talk about the journalist who wrote this. Don't harass this person, by the way, but like always, I just want to point out the patterns that I noticed. The writer of this inverse piece is named Hayes Madsen, a white guy who really doesn't like white people, apparently. Fandom Pulse compiled these, and in one of these examples, Ninja the streamer says that it's not his job to talk about kids and white privilege or anything like that, to which Hayes Madsen would reply, "It's not my job to recognize my white privilege on my massive platform, it's just about the most white privilege thing I've ever heard." Ah, of course, you're like this, Hayes. You are one of those liberal guys, aren't you? Then another post where people talk about rioting and the Boston Tea Party, and Hayes would reply, "Boy, I can't stand white people." Imagine hating yourself this much that you resort to bashing your own skin color. This was in 2020, dude, and no likes? So you're just hating your own demo for nothing but the love of the game? That's crazy. Hayes also said in 2020 about Black Lives Matter, "It's disheartening then not seeing any of your white family members speak out against racial injustice." They talk about rioting and property damage, but won't talk about systematic racism and police violence. Not one word. It's up to us to hold our family to account. Black Lives Matter. Oh man. Hayes is unironically the type of guy who would sell out his own family and let other people walk all over him because he has been conditioned by academia and his peers to lay on his back and allow others to belittle him for his skin color. I'm not even mad at Hayes here, who again wrote this inverse Dragon Age article, but after seeing how this guy thinks outside of his own articles, it really doesn't surprise me that he would frame this Corinne Bush interview like this. This is the ultimate form that activists want for white people. A pathetic man who will do nothing but allow himself to be ran over by others who will forget his name in 5 minutes after they use him or worse to get what they want. You're not saving anyone by being like this, Hayes. You're just confirming that the woke mind virus has successfully weaseled its way into your brain and has rewritten all the critical thinking parts of your brain. You're a victim, if you didn't know, but not in the way that you think. You've become yet another NPC that is just doomed to fade into nothingness and be forgotten by the very people you claim that you must uplift. All you're doing is helping those who hate you to erase you in the future. A tremendous loss of self-worth is all I see on display. I can't imagine hating myself like this. Hayes also said this in May 2024, "Forced diversity is such a strawman argument, goalposts shift and people find every excuse to say we're doing diversity wrong. More diverse experiences, characters, and stories only enrich this industry and all of us. Games should reflect the real world and who plays them. The idea that anything is being taken away is still so absurd to me. The majority of video games out there still feature predominantly white heroes, predominantly straight characters. Those experiences aren't being erased, and those demographics have been served for decades." You dismantle your own argument, Hayes, without realizing it when you said games should reflect the real world. No. In case you haven't noticed, games are not the real world. They are make-believe. This is the problem and a big reason of why these things don't work. It's because they're taking worlds that are often fantasy or science fiction, if you will, and then removing the believability or immersion of those worlds to make way for your real-world sensibilities. This is why people don't like that Tasha's stories about being non-binary, because it's not something someone who hunts dragons and fights to survive would be concerning themselves with within that world. They would really only care about money, survival, and ensuring that they can land their next meal so that they don't die. Thedas is a harsh place. Someone like Tosh wouldn't be dealing with gender identity. She's a Kunari, for God's sakes. None of it made any sense from the get-go. It's why no one wants games to take a political stance in the sense like saying that, I don't know, Joe Biden is right or wrong. Keep it all out of games. I don't want a game that says Trump is right or wrong either. I don't want any of it. I think games should only adhere themselves to the political ideologies that exist within their own worlds. A great example is Warhammer, a franchise where there is political and religious undertones to its world and universe, but they are political and religious within the context of that franchise specifically. I think when a Space Marine calls another a heretic for worshipping chaos, that's not political to me. That's a religious accusation that is unique to that specific world. Does that make any sense? However, if a Space Marine looked dead into the camera and went Black Lives Matter or MAGA, I would immediately go, what the hell are we even doing here? Because these concepts do not and should not exist within these objectively fake worlds. And once you allow the real world, as Hayes Madsen here claims must be present, it's always where these problems end up arising. Hayes, you are unable to perceive why these things are bad because your brain has been warped by ideology and conditioning by people around you who genuinely despise you for things that you cannot control yourself. You have become a victim of circumstance without realizing it, and I hope you realize that now. I don't hate you, but I do feel sorry for you. And I hope you come to realize that when your family was saying about the whole property damage thing, that is a valid concern. And the fact that you couldn't see that during the BLM riots or the ramifications of the economic principles that will undoubtedly affect those areas hit by BLM riots, it tells me everything about you. And that is that you're incapable of logic conversation and are instead so laser focused on other things. I'm not saying that black people should die, but the fact you dismiss your own family's pleas because they don't align with your own in the same moment, come on, Hayes. You're the kind of guy that if they were coming door to door to like shoot white people, you would actually think it was in your best interest to tell the executioners where your family was hiding because they're white. You're too deep down this liberal hole. You need to come up and breathe some fresh air to see why you're so far gone already. But with this added context, it's no wonder why this article and this agenda was being pushed here. Because it was made by a man who hates himself interviewing someone who hates the core audience of Dragon Age because they don't agree with them. It's a woke match made in heaven, and the perfect kind of article for someone like me to dissect to show others why it's so dangerous to think and act down this so-called self-righteous path of self-pity many of these kinds of journalists go down. And as Smash JT posted recently on Twitter, EA, which owns Veilguard, has been regularly banning players from their EA accounts for about 3 years now whenever they say don't be gay apparently. Well, just another reason to never play on EA Play, I guess. Because this kind of soft content moderation is poison. Besides, the word gay isn't bad anyways. These companies policing what they deem hate speech or not will do nothing but push more people to do the same or even worse going forward anyway. And I think the point that I'm making in this video is that we've reached a point where the ideology has lost so resounding that they are now resorting to gaslighting and attempting to change history through propaganda to fit their own narratives. Claiming that Veilguard lost everything because of the culture war is one hell of an angle. But the truth is that the game lost it all because it just wasn't very good and didn't give players what they waited 10 years for. Like always, these media types will try to lie to you like they tried in my previous video and more. And every time they lie, I will catch it and I will expose them because I'm never going to stop until the industry changes for the better. Not for white people, mind you, but for all players. I'm just sick of these activists who believe that their word is law when it's worthless instead. But that's what I got for you today. Let me know what you think as always. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. Thanks to my patrons and members, and I'll see you guys soon.